A mind can drown in toxic thoughts long before the world ever touches it. But why do the sharpest spirals come exactly when we need clarity the most? What invisible mechanism turns simple worries into storms that consume our focus and drain our strength? And why did the ancient Stoics insist that one hidden skill could silence this chaos? Stay with me, and you will discover how to reclaim control, clear the mental fog, and anchor your attention like a true Stoic. Marcus had always believed that mental chaos announced itself loudly, like thunder rolling across an open sky. But the truth revealed itself in a quieter, more sinister form. His toxic thoughts arrived like faint echoes, soft enough to ignore at first, yet persistent enough to shape the way he breathed, walked, and worked. They clung to him during silent mornings, when he stared at his desk, unable to begin even the simplest task, trapped in a fog he could not name. It began months earlier, on an evening that should have been ordinary. Marcus sat alone in his small apartment, the glow of his laptop reflecting off scattered notes and unfinished plans. He had dreams, ambitions, and a clear path laid out. Yet something inside him had begun to fracture. A single intrusive thought whispered, "What if you never get your life together?" It was a minor tremor, barely noticeable, but he let it linger. He let it repeat. And soon it multiplied. Every attempt to focus dissolved into spirals of overthinking. Every moment of rest turned into confrontation with fears he could not articulate. There was no enemy outside him, no crisis, no catastrophe, only a mind fighting itself. The worst part was the unpredictability. Some days he felt almost normal. Other days, his inner world felt like an abandoned city, covered in the dust of old regrets and imaginary disasters. He tried to suppress it, to outrun it, but the more he resisted, the louder the thoughts became. One night, overwhelmed and exhausted, Marcus wandered aimlessly through the quiet streets. Neon signs flickered above him, their reflections trembling in puddles along the sidewalk. He sat on a cold bench, burying his face in his hands, wondering why his mind seemed determined to sabotage him. That was when an old man approached him without hesitation, as if he had been waiting for Marcus to reach this exact level of despair. The stranger wore a faded coat and walked with a slow, deliberate rhythm. His eyes were calm, too calm for someone who had just discovered a young man unraveling in the dark. He stopped in front of Marcus and said, almost in a whisper, "Your thoughts are loud because you have forgotten who is supposed to be listening." Marcus looked up, startled. "What do you mean?" The old man sat beside him, placing a small notebook on his lap. "You are treating every passing thought as if it were a command, as if it were truth. But thoughts are not dictators. They are visitors." He opened the notebook to a page filled with carefully written lines. At the top was a name Marcus recognized instantly: Epictetus. The old man continued, "The Stoics understood something you do not. The problem is not the existence of toxic thoughts. The problem is that you confuse them with your identity. There is a gap, a space between stimulus and response. You have been living as if that space does not exist." Marcus felt a strange mix of confusion and relief. Could it really be that simple? Or was this man offering him a philosophy he was too broken to understand? The old man stood up slowly and placed the notebook in Marcus's hands. "If you want clarity, if you want focus, you must learn to control attention the same way a warrior controls his blade. Your mind is not the battlefield. Your attention is the weapon. Come find me tomorrow, and I will show you how." Marcus watched the man disappear into the darkness, the notebook growing heavier in his hands. For the first time in months, he felt something shift inside him. Not clarity, not peace, but the faint outline of a path he could follow. Before we continue, if this journey is already pulling you in, subscribe so you do not miss the next chapter. And tell me, which toxic thought has been the hardest for you to silence lately? Marcus woke before sunrise, the city still wrapped in a bluish haze. He had barely slept, turning the old man's words over and over in his mind. Your attention is the weapon. The idea felt foreign, almost mystical, yet it stirred something inside him that he had not felt in a long time, a sense of possibility. As he walked toward the small public square where the old man had told him to meet, his thoughts tried to reclaim control. They whispered the familiar lines. This will not work. You are wasting time. Nothing ever changes. But something was different. For the first time, Marcus did not respond to the whispers. He simply observed them, as if they were murmurs drifting from another room. It felt strange, almost like stepping outside of himself, but it cleared enough space in his mind to keep walking without hesitation. The old man was already there, seated beneath a weathered statue of a philosopher whose face had eroded with time. He greeted Marcus with a slow nod, as if acknowledging not just his presence, but the internal battle he had fought to arrive. Without preamble, he motioned for Marcus to sit beside him. Last night, the old man began, you experienced something important. You witnessed your thoughts without obeying them. That is the first doorway. He tapped the side of his head gently. Most people never reach it, Marcus asked. But how do I know which thoughts to trust and which ones to ignore? They all feel real. The old man smiled faintly. Everything that touches the mind feels real. But the Stoics learned to separate appearance from judgment. The thought itself is only the appearance. Your attachment to it, your interpretation, that is the judgment. And judgment is the only thing you control. He reached into the pocket of his coat and pulled out a small stone, smooth and dark, shaped naturally by years of erosion. Hold this, he said. Marcus complied, feeling the cold weight in his palm. Now imagine someone insults you, not a stranger, someone whose opinion matters. Your mind produces a thought. I must defend myself. I must react. That is the appearance. The old man tapped the stone again. But whether you grip that stone tightly or let it rest lightly in your palm, that is judgment. Marcus tightened his hand around the stone, noticing how his fingers strained around it. So the problem is not the insult, he muttered. It is the way I hold it. The old man nodded. Toxic thoughts work the same way. You hold them with such force that they dominate your attention. The more tightly you grip them, the heavier they grow. The Stoics learn to loosen their hold, to let thoughts exist without letting them rule. A quiet breeze passed through the square. Marcus looked down at the stone, fascinated by its simplicity. He wondered how many years it had taken for nature to shape it so gently. But when the mind is full of noise, he asked, how can I tell which thoughts are harmless and which are poisonous? The old man closed his eyes for a moment, as if remembering something ancient. By learning to pause, he said, not to react, not to judge immediately, but to pause long enough to see the truth beneath the surface. Clarity is hidden in that pause. He guided Marcus through an exercise, asking him to close his eyes and listen not to the chaos within, but to the subtle sounds around him. The flutter of wings on the rooftop above, the hum of distant traffic, the rustling leaves shifting in the morning air. At first, Marcus struggled. His mind kept trying to pull him into old spirals, forcing toxic thoughts onto center stage. But each time he drifted, the old man reminded him, do not fight the thought. Notice it, let it pass, and return to the present. Minutes passed, maybe more. Marcus could not tell. But gradually, something remarkable began to unfold. The storm in his mind softened. The noise dimmed. And for the first time in countless months, he felt a sense of spaciousness inside his chest, as if a locked room inside him had been opened. When he opened his eyes, the old man was watching him with quiet satisfaction. You just touched the edge of the space between stimulus and response, he said. But do not mistake this for mastery. This is only the beginning. To clear your mind, you must train your attention. To remain focused, You must discipline your perception. Marcus felt a pull inside him, a mixture of fear and excitement. Something deep told him that this path would demand everything he had avoided for years. But he also knew that if he stepped away now, the fog would return, heavier than before. The old man stood and motioned for Marcus to follow him down a narrow street. "There is more," he said, "much more. The mind does not surrender its chaos easily." Marcus hesitated only for a heartbeat, then stepped forward. The path was opening again, and this time he was ready to walk it. The narrow street the old man led Marcus through twisted like an aging artery between forgotten buildings. The walls were cracked, their paint peeling in long curls, as if the city itself had been shedding layers of time. It was quiet here, unnaturally quiet. No cars, no chatter, only the echo of their footsteps and the distant murmur of wind slipping through rusted window frames. Marcus felt as if he were crossing a threshold into a different world, one where the usual rules of his chaotic mind no longer applied. The old man walked slowly, deliberately, as though guiding him not to a place, but to a state of perception. Finally, they stopped in front of what looked like an abandoned workshop. Its windows were covered with dust, its wooden door slightly warped with age. "This," the old man said, pushing the door open with surprising strength, "is where your real training begins." Inside, the space was dim, illuminated only by the weak morning light pushing through the cracks in the walls. There were no machines, no tools, only a long wooden table, and on it a series of objects: a candle, a feather, a metal bowl, a cracked hourglass, and a faded parchment pinned beneath a stone. Marcus stared at the strange arrangement. "What is all this?" The old man moved toward the table and lit the candle with a match that hissed softly. The Stoics believed that clarity comes from understanding the nature of your mind. Today, you will see the 4 enemies that poison your attention, and you will understand why your thoughts have been ruling you instead of serving you. He picked up the feather first. It was delicate, impossibly light, swaying even from the faint tremor of his hand. "The first enemy is distraction," he said. "It appears harmless, soft, easy to entertain, but it scatters your mind piece by piece until you cannot hold a single thought long enough to act on it. How many times have you abandoned your work for something meaningless, something that required no effort yet stole your momentum?" Marcus swallowed. "Too many times to count." The old man placed the feather down and lifted the cracked hourglass. Only a few grains of sand rested inside, clinging stubbornly to the glass walls. "The second enemy is urgency. Not real urgency, the imagined kind. The fear that everything must be done now, or it will collapse. This rush destroys focus, because focus requires patience. Your toxic thoughts thrive here. They demand immediate attention, immediate reaction, immediate emotion." Marcus felt a chill run through him. He knew this enemy well. The pressure to solve everything instantly had been crushing him for years. Next, the old man lifted the metal bowl. It was dented, worn, clearly shaped by many impacts. "The third enemy is resistance. Not the thoughtful resistance of discernment, but the emotional kind. The resistance to discomfort, effort, and discipline. Every time you avoid a difficult task, every time you recoil from silence or solitude, you feed this enemy." Marcus remembered all the moments he distracted himself to escape his own thoughts, the endless scrolling, the pointless tasks, the impulsive decisions. Finally, the old man placed his hand on the parchment pinned beneath the stone. "And the 4th enemy," he said slowly, "is attachment. Attachment to stories you created about yourself. Stories that no longer serve you, but continue to trap you. This is where toxic thoughts live longest. They feed on identity. They tell you that because you failed before, you will fail again. That because you felt lost once, you are someone destined to be lost forever." Marcus felt a tightness in his chest. He had lived inside those stories for so long that he had mistaken them for the structure of his personality. The old man leaned closer. You cannot clear your mind until you learn to confront these four enemies. And you cannot confront them until you understand one truth. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that sees them. For a moment, the room felt suspended in silence. A flickering candle cast shifting shadows on the walls, turning the space into a living metaphor of Marcus's inner landscape. Dark corners hiding old narratives, trembling light revealing new possibilities. But how do I fight them? Marcus asked, almost pleading. I do not even know where to begin. The old man smiled, not kindly, but knowingly, as if he had waited for that exact question. You do not begin by fighting. You begin by observing. A warrior does not swing blindly into darkness. He studies the terrain first. He gestured to the objects on the table. Each of these represents a lesson, and we will face them one by one. Today, we begin with the enemy that has ruled you the longest. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. Which one is that? The old man blew out the candle, plunging the room into near darkness. The one that hides in silence, he said. The enemy that arrives without warning and leaves you paralyzed. He stepped toward the door. Come. What you are about to learn will change everything. Marcus followed, heart pounding. Something told him that the next lesson would not be gentle. It would break him before it rebuilt him. He stepped into the cold air, unaware of the emotional storm waiting for him just beyond the threshold. The old man led Marcus deeper into the forgotten district, where the buildings grew taller and the light struggled to reach the ground. Each step echoed like a heartbeat in a hollow chest. It was as though the city itself had fallen silent to witness what would happen next. Marcus could feel the tension pressing against his skin, a quiet warning that whatever waited ahead would not be something he could simply think his way out of. They soon reached a courtyard surrounded by crumbling walls. At its center stood a single stone column, ancient and eroded, as though it had survived centuries of storms. The old man stopped beside it. Here, he said, is where you will confront the enemy that has shaped your entire inner world without your permission. Marcus frowned. What enemy? The old man placed a hand on the column. The enemy of silence. The one that fills your mind with noise whenever the world grows quiet. The one that convinces you that stillness is dangerous. A cold shiver crawled up Marcus's spine. He knew exactly what the old man meant. Those moments alone, when the distractions faded, or when the worst thoughts surfaced. When doubt spoke with the voice of certainty. When memories sharpened into weapons. The old man stepped aside and motioned for Marcus to stand before the column. This, he continued, is where you will learn the first discipline of the Stoics, to remain present in the storm of your own mind. Marcus looked at the column, then at the empty courtyard around him. What am I supposed to do? Nothing, the old man whispered. And that is precisely why it will terrify you. He walked back several paces, leaving Marcus alone. The courtyard suddenly felt larger, colder, alive with invisible pressure. Marcus took a breath and placed his palms against the stone. It was rough, grounding. At first, nothing happened. The silence was simple, heavy but not threatening. But within a few moments, his thoughts began their familiar assault. Small worries at first, then deeper ones. Echoes of past mistakes. Voices he had silenced only by drowning them in work, noise, or distraction. The spiral tightened. Why did you trust him? What if you fail this too? What if this is all pointless? What if you never gain control? Marcus clenched his jaw. The thoughts multiplied faster, like shadows splitting in the dark. His breathing quickened. His hands trembled. The silence wrapped around him like a vice. He stepped back from the column, shaking his head. I cannot do this. My mind is. It is too loud. The old man did not move. And yet you stand here. Keep going. Marcus tried again and again. Each time, the silence swallowed him. Each time, the thoughts grew darker, sharper, heavier. The courtyard seemed to tilt, as if every toxic idea in his mind were dragging him downward. "This is pointless," he said at last, his voice barely holding together. "You said I needed clarity. This is the opposite. This is clarity," the old man replied, finally approaching him. "You are seeing, without distortion, what your mind does the moment the world stops moving. This is the chaos you carry with you everywhere you go. You think the noise is outside. It is not. It is built inside you." Marcus looked at the ground, defeated. "How do I silence it?" "You do not silence it," the old man said, raising Marcus's chin. "You outgrow it." He placed Marcus's hand back onto the stone. "Observe your thoughts as if they were strangers passing by. Do not argue with them. Do not wrestle them. Let them speak, and then let them leave. This is the foundation of Stoic clarity." Marcus inhaled slowly. This time, when the thoughts resurfaced, he did not fight. He watched. The doubts surged. The fears whispered. The regrets demanded attention. But now, he saw the pattern each thought rising, trying to claim him, then fading as soon as he stopped feeding it. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Time felt irrelevant. And then, for the first moment in years, a small pocket of stillness opened in his mind. Not silence awareness, not emptiness control. The old man nodded. "Good. You have taken your first step toward clearing the mind." Marcus stepped back from the column, breathing deeply. His thoughts were still there, but they were no longer dragging him. They were simply present. He looked at the old man. "What comes next?" The old man's expression darkened slightly, as if he were preparing Marcus for something heavier. "Next," he said, "you will face the enemy that hides beneath all others. The one that turns discomfort into dread and uncertainty into paralysis." Marcus felt a chill cut through the air. "What enemy is that?" The old man turned toward a narrow path leading out of the courtyard. "Fear, the kind you have been avoiding for years without realizing it." Marcus followed him, knowing that the next lesson would not merely challenge him, it would expose him. The path narrowed into a corridor of fractured stone, as if the earth itself had tried to swallow whatever lay ahead and failed. Marcus followed the old man in silence, every step feeling heavier, thicker, as though the air itself resisted their movement. He sensed they were leaving the outer layers of his mind behind and descending into something much older, much more deeply rooted. They emerged into a cavernous hall, entirely underground, illuminated only by a soft blue glow that pulsed from the walls. In the center stood a circular platform carved with symbols Marcus did not recognize. The old man stepped onto it and turned to face him. "This," he said, "is where you confront the fear you have never dared to name." Marcus swallowed hard. "I have faced fear before." The old man shook his head. "You have faced danger. That is different. Danger is real. Fear is imagined. And yet fear is the one that rules you. It is the one that steals your focus, poisons your thoughts, and fills your mind with the toxic stories that keep you small." Marcus felt his pulse accelerate. The walls seemed to vibrate, reacting to his unease. "What do I have to do?" he asked. The old man gestured to the platform. "Step inside the circle. You will see." Marcus hesitated, but only for a breath. He stepped onto the cold stone. Immediately, the blue glow surged and the chamber went silent, so silent he could hear his heartbeat echo like footsteps in an empty world. Then the darkness thickened, and from within it, a figure appeared. Marcus froze. The shape looked almost human, same height, same build, same posture. But its face was unfinished, shifting like smoke trying to take form. "What is that?" Marcus whispered. The old man's voice echoed from somewhere far behind him. "Your fear. Not fear of danger, not fear of paying. Fear of yourself. The figure stepped forward, its head tilted with unsettling familiarity. Marcus's breath stuttered. He felt an instinctive urge to look away, but he forced himself to hold the gaze or the suggestion of a gaze. The shapeless mouth opened, and Marcus heard his own voice. "You will fail." The words hit him like a blade. The figure stepped closer, absorbing the faint light around it. "You always do." Marcus clenched his fists. The chamber felt tighter, smaller. A pressure built inside his chest, the familiar collapsing sensation that always came when his mind spiraled. The old man's voice echoed again. "Do not speak to it. Do not argue. Observe." The figure moved even closer, now only a few steps away. "You are weak. You cannot control your mind. You pretend to be stronger than you are. You will break again." Marcus felt the tremor in his hands, the instinct to run, the instinct to deny, the same instincts that had shaped years of avoidance, distraction, and self-doubt. And then he remembered the first lesson. Observe the thought. Do not become it. He inhaled slowly, and instead of resisting the words, he watched them. He watched the fear speak, watched it push forward, watched it try to latch onto him like it always had. But this time, it could not anchor itself. The figure paused. Its form wavered, as if confused that Marcus was no longer collapsing. "You are nothing," it hissed, voice cracking. Marcus exhaled. "You are only a thought." The chamber vibrated. The walls brightened. The figure staggered as if struck. For the first time, Marcus saw it clearly. Not a monster, not a prophecy, just a reflection of his own beliefs, starved of truth for too long. He took one step forward. The figure shrank. Another step. The figure trembled. And with a final step, Marcus walked directly into the fear. The moment he passed through it, the figure dissolved like dust in sunlight. The chamber expanded again. The air loosened. Marcus sank to one knee, overwhelmed not by terror, but by relief. The old man approached slowly. "You have just done what most never attempt. You faced the fear that hides behind all others, the belief that you are not enough." Marcus looked up, exhausted but steady. "I did not defeat it." "No," the old man said, helping him stand. "You understood it. And understanding is the only path to freedom." Marcus felt a new clarity settling in him, not gentle, but powerful like a river that had finally unclogged after years of obstruction. "What comes next?" he asked, knowing the journey was far from over. The old man's expression shifted, filled with something heavier, almost sorrowful. "Now," he said, "you will confront the final barrier, the one that has controlled your focus, your decisions, and the way you see the world." Marcus's breath tightened. "What barrier?" The old man turned toward a distant staircase carved into the rock. "The barrier of false identity. And breaking it will change everything. If you are still here, this journey is resonating with you. Consider subscribing to join each new chapter as it unfolds. And tell me in the comments, which fear have you been avoiding without realizing it? Allah's no horizonte como cua tremor, como se o proprio seu estives respirando errado. O vento, antes pesado y quente, tornou se gelido de repente, frio que não vem a atmosfera, mas de algum lugar que não deve existir. I accentua madenca antes de todos. Esta comicando, murmuro, apertando o ciebio despada ritual. Caminhamos do topo do penhasco, onde antiga porta da megaconstruct ao jazia semi-enterrada. Agriparum, algo pulsava atrás dela, como coracal tentando bater depois de séculos morto. Uma vibraquo tonal, grave, profunda, quase humana, e cu pelos polares. Aya do passo e frente. Essa estrutura nunca foi feita para ficar aberta. En tuo percuabrium? Perguntai, mesmo temendo a resposta. Porc alguém queria conversar, cum aquilo q mora du outro antis qeu pudis diser qualquer coisa, aporta se abru opines o sufficiente par liberum sopro, de aer antigo pesado. Nau tinha cairo, mas provocu uma sensical estrena. Como se memorias que nao irem minas, tentassim se filterem mim. Du fundo du corrido, sombris comacarem se mover. Mas nao sombris nature. Irem figuras distorcidas, debradas em angulos impassives, como corpos cutinem disaprendido e sir tridimensione. Aya ergua mal, nao ol diretto, iales vim atreves du oler. Tard de me. Porum instanti, uma daquelas formas cruzo meu campo de visao, e senti como se algum teves paxado meus pensamentos para fora da cabeça. Lutei contra vertigem, respire fundo, e recuperei o control. Aya paxu algo da bolsa. Aqueno cilindro com inscripscu eu nunca tinha visto. Esse e nosso único selo de contentio. Quando eu disser, lanca dentro defenda. As sombras avancarem de uma vez eso, como uma mare negra e silenciosa, corremos. Aya abru camino como lâmina que emisha uma luz azulada, cortando as figuras que se dissolviam, e voltavem a se recompor. Atrás de nós, o corredor inteiro como que se inclinar. A estrutura estava mudando de forma, reagindo a nossa presença. Agra! Ela gritou. Joguei o cilindro com toda forca. El rolu pelo cho. Batu na base da porta e adavu, liberando luz im espral, que subiu como uma coluna. As sombras recuaram. Gritando sem som. Porta como que a fecar. Devagar, como se lutas contra algo gigantesco do outro lado. Aya me paxu. Corre, antes que ela trave, semos no último segundo. A porta finalmente saiu com uma explosão de poeira e luz. O silencio retornou. Respiramos exhaustos. Aya se viru para mim, suya, sangrando, mas sorrindo de livre. Sobrevivimos. Por agora, eu olhei para a porta antiga, indequente, pelo que acabara de acontecer. Isso vai acontecer de novo? Não vai? Aya assentiu. Sim. E da próxima vez, eles verão preparados. O vento voltou a normal, mas algo no ar estava claro. Aquilo que habitava as tumbas silenciosas tinha percebido que estávamos aqui. E estávamos longe de estar seguros.